Hello and welcome back to the Museum of Music Technology New Zealand, also known as my basement, which has the largest collection of musical instruments in New Zealand. I'm just going to tell you more about the programmable drum units, as you can see here, and we'll start at the beginning. So we had the programmable drum set made by Pi, which came out around about 1976, very limited and had just a couple of programs and very poor sounds on it. Boss brought out the DR55, which is located over here. Very early programmable unit, and we'll just see how easy it is to actually program. So select write mode, pick a sound, and you basically got note and rest here. And that's the finished result. Quite basic. You can also add on to the hi-hat. There's a rim shot as well, so literally 4 sounds, only which 3 are programmable. So we'll stop that. We'll go to write mode, select another pattern, and we'll just write a program. That was the bass. Try the snare now. And we'll go back to play mode and we'll try that. Can add a bit of hi-hat. And it's as simple as writing a pattern as that. We also had the Roland CR78, which came before that, which is basically a preset unit, which is located over here. So that had largely preset sounds. And also it gave the opportunity to have 4 programmable rhythms just down here. Very basic, used by Phil Collins, Roxy Music, Visage, Ultravox, and John Fox as well. So this saw the demise of all the preset drum units. As you can see, a big pile of them here in the corner, lying around, not really doing much anymore. Literally museum pieces, which is what they should be. They're all found in the book Rhythm Machines, The Rise and Fall of the Presets, written by Alex Graham, available on Amazon right now. So we'll take you through the history of the programmable units. This is an early Korg programmable one with no MIDI on board, and that was just basically bought out and then followed shortly after by the Korg DDD1, DDD5 series, which are much better. This is a really complicated program, no MIDI. Quite a good unit nonetheless. What it did have was quite an interesting display here, which allowed you to actually see what you were programming, so it was actually quite revolutionary in that term. We go back here to basically the godfather of programmable units, which is the Linn Marquand. This is actually the demonstrator model for Europe, and belonged to Groovy Bob. Later appeared in Felix Visser's collection of a museum project for Holland, which never really materialised. Let's have a listen to that one. And that sounds very similar to Human League songs and Heaven 17 songs. You might recognise those patterns. And here are the drums. This one's actually been modified by Bruce Forat. These pitch wheels here, they're normally located on the back, but I've had them relocated to the front. Forat Electronics from Los Angeles, and it's a great modification. As you can see here, there's very little in the way of cymbals. There were a couple of cymbal cards made by Bob Easton, but very limited numbers. So Roger Linn came up with the Linn drum around about 1982. Let's have a listen to that one. And the bonus of this one was it had more cymbal sounds. Let's crash and ride. And again, you just press a button and you can go to claps, cowbell, and back to ride again. It's a brilliant unit, obviously heard on records all over the world for several years after it came out. In the meantime, Roland were not content with the Boss DR55, so they came up with this one here. Roland TR-808 came out around about 1980, again pre-MIDI, although this one's got a MIDI retrofit. Let's have a listen to that one. Again, very primitive, very limited in terms of the actual display that you can read, so you're totally relying on the LEDs along the bottom here. But at the time it was used on records by many people, and subsequently obviously by dance artists about 8 to 10 years after it came out. Heard on many records in the early 80s, Marvin Gaye included, many other people. All of these are featured in the book Rhythm Machines 2, the 1980s drum computers, again written by Alex Graham, available now as of August 2018 on Amazon. Same time as this came out, roughly, there's the Roland TR-606. There's one here, and shortly thereafter the TR-909, which was followed very quickly within a year by this plasticky Roland TR-707 and also a percussion version, the Roland TR-727, about half the price of the TR-909 and with all digital sounds. The only thing that was let down really is the actual casing and the external power supply. If you put the wrong power supply in, you tend to fry the unit. All of these sounds, of course, can be heard in the modern age on one of these things, which is the Roland TR-8. Let's go and have a look at the Roland TR-909. Here's what I prepared earlier. Let's have a listen to that one. At the same time as Roger Linn was coming out with the Linn drum, Tom Oberheim was also looking at drum machines and moved away from synthesizers, and he came up with a very good drum machine called the DMX. Some of the actual cards in here are not the original cards, as you can tell by this very long crash sample. Rim shot, tambourine, shakers, claps. And that's an electric tom, so that's the replacement card I've got put in there. This one is one of the later units, so this one has MIDI, which is later fitted on. And finally, let's have a quick look at all the other units that came out. So for the sequential drum tracks. One of the good things about this unit is made in Japan, but it has a hinged cover here which comes back. Very clever, the Japanese, of course. And inside you could actually change the chips. So if you have a look here, that's one of the original ones, and this one is made by a company called DigiDrums, who basically produced all these chips for not only the drum tracks, also the drumulator, and also the Simmons SDS 9. And very clever to have actually a hinged bracket here as well to keep the unit up while you're changing. ZIF sockets are preferable because ZIF sockets you can actually zero insertion 4, so you can basically take out the chips very easily, whereas if you tend to put these in yourself you can damage the actual pins on them. Sequential, of course, followed that up with a Sequential tom about a year or two later. Pretty good unit, but wasn't really used much for recording by the major artists, and around 3,500 of these were manufactured. Here's another, the original Oberheim DX, so the pre-MIDI version. Here's an example of one of the cards that you can purchase here. Let's just have a look and see what's inside this and how you can actually do that. So these are all the cards here over on the left hand side. And you just basically take them out, obviously while it's not powered up is preferable, and just swap them over as you require. So again, very clever, hinged main cover at the which is great again for replacing all these cards, so again good thinking. Oberheim followed that up with a cheaper version in competition with all the other cheaper drum machines that came out with the DX. So essentially the same sounds, but again the technology advanced by this stage to get rid of these large cards and produce smaller chips. This is the original DX, and this is a later DXA model. How can you tell that? Well, it's got MIDI, so you can tell by the extra writing here, all the MIDI. A company called Electrongate actually do retrofits, and they provide a sticker here for the earlier units with all these features. Another big difference again is the buttons are smaller, again to save costs. Very tinny plastic sides. Again, Electrongate can produce the original wooden sides like the DMX. What other units do we have? Well, the French also had a go at drum machines, so the RF-DD30. There was meant to be an earlier RF-DD which seemingly never materialised, a DD14. I've never seen one. I don't believe they were ever released. I think they just went straight for the DD30, and again they only manufactured about 300 of these. Very few of them are found in working order nowadays. At the back here, Emu, who just brought out the emulator, to make some money, they came up with the drumulator. It's quite limited in terms of the actual sounds, and basically was let down by a lack of buttons. However, many of these were sold, and later versions again came out with MIDI. And again, this has the chip, so you can replace the chip sounds. Here are the clones. These are the Boss DR55 clones. So a company called Soundmaster came out, brought out the SR88, a blue version, a later black version, and also this is basically a copy of that, the EDC99. Movement brought out the sequence memory rhythm, which again is basically just a DR55, but it's slightly improved. And at the same time, Movement were bringing out the Movement drum computer, a very rare unit, and that was used by the Eurythmics, Kajagoogoo, and various other people. And the Movement Mark II, again used by the Eurythmics, Kajagoogoo, Thompson Twins, and a couple of others. Very rare. Here's another clone, the KDRM, essentially SR55 but improved version of it. Very similar programming, as you can see. And the last Soundmaster product, which was the Sticks, which was again slightly improved, and that was in competition with the TR606. A very good unit, and I'd recommend you buying one. Very, very good value for money, not only when it came out but also nowadays. Here's a very rare unit, the Ensoniq Percussion. This is a prototype, and only a couple of these were probably ever made, and this is one of them here. Very similar programming to the TR series by Roland. And down here, another essentially almost like a DR55, but actually made by a British company called Clef. And this came out as a kit in one of the electronics magazines. And he later brought out the Clef band box, which also had bass, so you could program bass sounds and chords. So quite often you'll find the standalone Clef Master Rhythm, well worth tracking one down if you can find one, or the complete unit. Very few band boxes were actually manufactured, but again it's all in a kit, and it's you can still pick up the magazines. The components may be hard to come by now. Well, after all that, they turned their attention to sampling, and who better to come up with a sampling drum machine than Roger Linn? So he brought out the Linn 9000, which again is featured in this book, Rhythm Machines 2, the 1980s drum computers, which is now on Amazon. The sampling card took a while to come out, so it was almost about a year after these came out. It was like a sequencing drum machine sampler, so a workstation. Cost a lot of money, and when they came out there were so many software issues that a lot of people were complaining that they were making programs, patterns, and they were just basically locking up and losing everything. So the software kept getting reissued, but unfortunately there were so many problems with it. It led to the demise of the Linn company. Bruce Forat subsequently took over what was left of Linn parts, etc., and he actually got the software fixed, brought out the Forat F9000 model, which is an advanced model of this with a sample card, and many producers in Los Angeles have got those. It's a very good unit, and I'd highly recommend, if you got the software version 7 for the Linn 9000, that should not lock up anymore. It's got so many extra features that were not found on the early Linn 9000s. About 1,100 of these were manufactured, and Bruce Forat subsequently made a few hundred more, as well as in fact producing more Linn drums, because he still had about 100 Linn drum chassis when he took over the what was left of the Linn fire sale auction. And Emu obviously known for sampling with the emulator and emulator 2, and they brought out a sampling drum machine, the SP12, followed thereafter by the advanced version of this, the SP1200. Other people who had a go at sampling, the French, the RSF SD140, again only a couple of hundred where these are made, and basically in competition with all the others, I think just because it was a French company, not really many were manufactured. It was a combination of Aria and RSF, who were known for making the polycobble and cobble keyboard synthesizers. Basically RSF ceased to exist shortly after this came out. And there's one down here, the Anvil percussion synth. This is the only one. This is the prototype. And again, this was announced by Bob Henrit in a magazine that he put in the magazine. Oh, rumour has it there's a British company bringing out a sampling drum machine. This was around mid-1982. One of the main people behind this was a musician called Rod Bowkert, who is perhaps infamous for being the one who programmed the Happy Talk single by Captain Sensible, which got to #1 in the UK. And he basically was one of the main people behind the design of this. Unfortunately, after about 2 years and all the money dried up, the Anvil was never actually manufactured. And again, this is the only one which I have here. All of this information again can be found in the Rhythm Machines book, which has just come out, Rhythm Machines 2, the 1980s drum computers. So what else do we have that came out? Another British one, the Cheetah. Cheetah initially brought out a software package over here called the Spectrum, and this also features in the Rhythm Machines 2 book, a chapter on all these computer systems that are available, including the PVI drum key. PVI subsequently became Ensoniq, and the PVI drum key supposedly for the Apple sounds very much like that percussion unit that I mentioned earlier, the prototype. So they did use some of the same technology for that drum machine that was never released. So Cheetah brought out the Spectrum. There's just a little interface here, just 2 unemployed musicians from Wales brought that out, and Cheetah manufactured it and marketed it, and subsequently had some tapes, so Latin kit, electro kit, and over here we've got the Afro kit as well. That was followed by the Cheetah MD8. This is one of the later versions, and this one has a power switch on the back, unlike the early black version, again, which was a budget model. And this is the early black one here. Very few of these exist, and in truth very few of them still work. Here's a Russian one which is modelled essentially on the Yamaha RX series, and the DR9. There was also a DR8, and there was an LPSR model which all had the same chassis, very slightly different buttons on the front and the control panel. Later on into the 90s we had, of course, a host of Boss DRs, of Dr. Rhythms, and a lot of these contain the same sounds, all the 808, 909 sounds as samples, and very good value for money from Boss. So you got the DR 670, 660, 770, 550, and so on, all in the 90s. Also in the 90s, Cheetah brought out probably their best product, the Cheetah MD16, which is available initially in this very cheap plasticky casing. Very good drum sounds, let down by the casing. Also brought out a rack, the Cheetah MD16R, and an even rarer rack version called the Cheetah 16RP, which allowed you to set up a very cheap Cheetah electronic drum unit. So basically had an interface built into it. If you didn't have the interface, you could just buy the interface separately, which is what this particular Cheetah interface is here. Well, that's pretty much it. There are other ones featured again. I'll go on to the little pad units that are also featured in the Rhythm Machines 2 book, the 1980s drum computers. So MPC here with the pad unit, the MPC1. This allowed you not only to trigger drum sounds, but you could also program it and use it with a Sinclair computer, so it had a computer interface. This was a later advanced thing of what they came up with initially, which was the MPC, the kit, which is not exactly a drum machine, but allowed you to have a kind of preset cymbals, a hi-hat, and you could use the pads with your fingers to trigger drum sounds, and the little brass discs here are actually the cymbals. It's quite clever. This is the second version of this unit. There was an earlier white version, of which very few were actually sold or manufactured. The Impulse 1 basically was an advancement of the MPC 1. It came out about a year later from Alan Heath Brunel, and well known for making mixers, and they're still making mixers today. Only about 100 to 200 of these are known to exist, and hardly any of them are still working, unfortunately. And the Simmons Porter Kit. Simmons obviously known for electronic drums. The Porter Kit, and there's also a drum station which was never released. This is kind of like the drum station, does allow you to actually retain and program sequences that you've entered with the pads here. Well, that concludes all the basic programmable drum units that I have here. And again, if you want more information on them, please buy the book, Rhythm Machines 2, the 1980s Drum Computers. This is basically the definitive book on 1980s drum machines. It's got about a chapter also on preset drum machines that came out in the 1980s, and it's got every programmable drum machine, like I say, all these prototypes you've never heard of, and various other ones that are incredibly rare and obscure. If you don't have much money, you can also buy the Drum Facts series, which is essentially the same book, but it's not in colour, it's in black and white. Apart from the cover itself, everything else is in black and white. Let's have a quick look through here, and that's about half the price. There's also Rhythm Machines 3, From Decline to Retro Design, and that essentially mentions all the drum machines from 1990 up to 2018, including the new Roland product that's just come out, and also the core products. And again, that is also, for those with no money, that is available as Drum Facts 3 in black and white for about half the price. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation of all my drum machines, and it took me days to pretty much get all these put together, and I hope you enjoyed looking at them. I say, for more information, please buy the books, and I'm sure you won't regret buying the book.